The Audi R8 remains one of the most usable supercars ever built, comfortable enough to drive to work, reliable enough to actually own, and still striking enough to turn heads nearly 2 decades after that mid-engine layout first left engineers stunned. It was one of the first cars to prove a supercar didn't need to be a compromise. No temperamental electronics, no clutch that needs replacing every 10,000 kilometers, just genuine, everyday usability wrapped around genuine performance. But even the cheapest usable R8 starts around 50,000 euros, and clean examples routinely creep past 100,000. So the question is simple. Can you get that same mid-engine, exotic badge thrill without spending R8 money? The good news is that the used market is full of cars that borrow a piece of the R8's formula. Some through shared engineering, some through raw power, some through the same mid-engine layout that makes it handle the way it does. Here are 6 alternatives that get remarkably close, starting with the most expensive and getting cheaper as we go. First up is the car that practically shares the R8's bloodline, the Lamborghini Gallardo. Audi and Lamborghini developed the platform and the naturally aspirated V10 together under the same Volkswagen Group roof, which means driving a Gallardo is a lot like driving the R8's wilder Italian cousin. Production ran from 2003 through 2013, making it Lamborghini's best-selling model ever, with well over 14,000 built. So unlike most exotics, parts availability and specialist knowledge are actually decent. Early Gallardos start around 95,000 euros, making it the most expensive car on this list. But that gets you a 5-liter or later 5.2-liter V10, producing anywhere from 500 to over 560 horsepower, and a 0 to 60 time under 4 seconds depending on the model. The catch is exactly what you'd expect from a Lamborghini. Maintenance costs scale with the badge. Clutch replacements, cam belt services, and Italian exotic parts pricing can turn what looks like a bargain supercar into a money pit fast. Still, if you specifically want the same engineering lineage as the R8, nothing else on this list gets you closer. Drop the budget and you land on the Dodge Viper SRT-10, a car built on the opposite philosophy entirely. No all-wheel drive, no forced induction, and historically not much in the way of driver aids. Just an 8.3-liter V10 and your own right foot. The engine itself has genuine motorsport pedigree. It was co-developed with Lamborghini during Chrysler's ownership of the brand in the early 1990s, which means the Viper's V10 shares a family tree with actual Italian exotics, not just American muscle car parts bins. Used Vipers typically sell in the 55 to 70,000 euro range depending on mileage and generation, and they'll hit 60 in around 4 seconds with a top speed near 200 miles per hour. But where the R8 is famous for being easy to drive fast, the Viper built the opposite reputation. Early cars had no traction control, side exit exhausts that run uncomfortably hot in the cabin, and a well-earned history of punishing drivers who got greedy with the throttle in the wet. It's raw where the R8 is refined, but the horsepower per euro math is hard to argue with. Still too rich for your budget? The Nissan GT-R R35 generation might be the smartest buy on this entire list. Nissan spent nearly a decade developing it before launch in 2007, obsessing over the kind of details most manufacturers never bother with. Hand-assembled engines, each built start to finish by a single certified technician, and a dual-clutch transmission developed with input from motorsport specialists. Early 2009 models can be found for around 55,000 euros, and they left the factory with 480 horsepower, a hand-built twin-turbo V6, and an all-wheel drive system precise enough that it lapped the Nürburgring in under 7 minutes 27 seconds, a time that embarrassed cars costing 3 times as much when it debuted. Like the R8, it's shockingly usable as a daily driver despite the numbers. The catch is that GTRs are notoriously hard on transmissions, clutch packs, and tires if you launch them repeatedly, and dealer-level repair bills for the drivetrain can be brutal. Buy one with a documented service history, not one that's been drag raced every weekend. For proof that you don't need forced induction or all-wheel drive to compete, there's the Corvette Z06 C6 generation. Every LS7 engine that went into this car was also hand-assembled at GM's Performance Build Center by a single technician who signs a plaque on the engine cover. The same manufacturing philosophy Nissan used for the GT-R, just wearing a bow tie instead of a badge. These sell for somewhere around 45,000 euros on average, and for that money you get a naturally aspirated 7-liter LS 7 V8 making 505 horsepower, a 0 to 60 in around 3 seconds flat, and a top speed just under 200 miles per hour. On paper, it's quicker in a straight line than the R8 it's supposedly standing in for, and the underlying engine architecture traces back to Corvette racing programs that competed at Le Mans, which is part of why it feels so unapologetically track-focused. The catch is the same one that's followed every American sports car on this list into Europe. An interior that feels like a rental car next to the R8's cabin, and a badge that won't turn heads at a Berlin car meet the way 4 silver rings will. But nobody buys an LS7-powered Corvette for the stitching. Prefer balance over brute force? The Porsche Cayman S 987 generation might be the closest thing to the R8's mid-engine feel for a fraction of the price. Built between 2005 and 2012 with a mid-cycle refresh in 2009, it shares its basic architecture with the Boxster, but with a fixed roof that adds torsional rigidity the convertible can't match. These typically sell for around 30,000 euros, sometimes less on high-mileage automatic examples, and they pack a 3.4-liter flat-six making close to 295 horsepower. What it lacks in outright speed next to everything above it on this list, it makes up for with the same near-ideal mid-engine weight distribution that makes the R8 so composed through corners. Some enthusiasts argue Porsche deliberately kept the Cayman a step behind the 911 in outright power, just to protect that badge hierarchy. The catch is obvious. Less power means it can't touch the others in a straight line. But for pure steering feel and cornering balance, plenty of owners will tell you it's actually the better driving car. And finally, if you want the mid-engine layout and exotic proportions for next to nothing, there's the second-generation Toyota MR2 Turbo. It earned the nickname the poor man's Ferrari decades before this video existed, thanks to side strakes that echo Ferrari's mid-engine cars, right down to a Japanese motoring show once drag racing one against a Ferrari 348 to a dead tie over the quarter mile. These sell for around 21,000 euros on average, powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, making around 200 horsepower in a car that weighs under 1,300 kilos. It's the cheapest way onto this entire list to feel what mid-engine handling actually feels like. The catch is real. The W20 generation MR2 built a lasting reputation for snap oversteer at the limit, especially in the wet. And that reputation isn't just internet folklore. It's why insurance on these can be surprisingly steep for the car's age. Treat it with respect, and it might be the closest thing to R8 DNA you'll ever get for the price of a used hatchback. So there you have it. 6 cars that get you closer to R8 level thrills without the R8 level bill, ranging from a car that quite literally shares the R8's engine bloodline down to one that costs less than a family SUV. None of them wear the 4 rings, but every one of them earns its spot on real specs, not just internet hype. Which of these would you actually daily drive? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.